All right, it is time. I believe, once again, listen. There's that music. Time once again for A Moment with Bob, brought to you by your friends at Offshore Drilling. Tonight, the subject is, this was the year that was great. And by the way, I have an abbreviated version here because of time constraints, but you can read the entire original at tvnewslies.org. tvnewslies.org. I shouldn't have to tell you to go to that site. Under editorial link, Bob Alexander. Hey, Mike! 1 year ago today, we loaded up a borrowed truck for the last time, and in the great tradition of the Grapes of Wrath and the Beverly Hillbillies, rolled on out toward a dream of a better life. The Jodes struggled along Route 66 from Oklahoma's Dust Bowl through California's Mojave Desert to get to the Promised Land. Jed Clampett sold his oil-rich swamp in the Ozarks for $25 million and moved his family to the hills of Beverly. Well, our move wasn't as difficult as the Jodes and certainly not as well subsidized as the Clampetts. It took us 10 years to have the wherewithal to make the 2.5-hour drive from our house in Seattle to our new home in Canada. Though we woke up in a new country, we didn't have the time to appreciate it for the first 3 months or so. We still have family back in Seattle. We've gone down and back for holidays and birthdays. Every time we cross the border back into Canada, I feel great relief that we've re-escaped. A fellow American expat also residing in Canada said it best when he emailed me. He wrote, "These days, I live with the air of freedom that is, without fail, replaced by an air of repression every time I have to go back into the States." I've been leery of my government since the Vietnam War. The Reagan years convinced me it wasn't that difficult to convince millions of people to tentatively hold hands with fascism. After 2 stolen presidential elections, the attacks on 9/11, and the invasion of Iraq, it's obvious we've gone way beyond the hand-holding stage to fully embracing fascism. We didn't come up here for the inexpensive health care or the Chinese food. We came up here because the United States of America is closing down. And I didn't want us to get caught on the wrong side of the border. Before the Civil War, the U.S. South was a closed society. People couldn't freely explore their own thoughts to anyone or even to themselves without eventually having to face the horrible conclusion that their entire way of life was based upon owning human beings. Therefore, an arcane code of courtesy came about to keep inconvenient truths from tarnishing polite conversation. There were just some things one didn't talk about. There's quite a long list of things Americans can't talk about since the coup of December 2000. It's not polite to bring up the illegitimate warmongering president, the non-existent weapons of mass destruction, the horrific numbers of dead in Iraq and Afghanistan, the gutting of the poor and the middle class, and the fact that the criminals who committed these crimes have not been prosecuted. At the top of the list of unmentionables, if you're a so-called liberal, is the lethal presidency of Barack Obama. We can't have a national discussion about any of these things without being shouted down. The right wing goes back crap ballistic, and the so-called liberal water carriers forcefully whine, again, about the lesser of two evils dodge. We can talk about whatever we want to as long as we don't talk about what is going on. I don't understand how any rational American can stop vomiting. Since there are only a couple of months before the election, those unlucky enough to watch television in swing states are being carpet-bombed with crazy. The deranged Republican message is to steadfastly ignore what Romney and Ryan have done and vilify Obama for things he has never done. In other words, they're lying their asses off by omission and commission. The Democrats, on the other hand, are focusing on what Romney and Ryan actually have done and said, but ignoring the evil Obama has done. Since the Democrats are only half lying, They claim the moral high ground. This go-round and forevermore, I'm out of the game of heads they win, tails we lose. Regardless of who wins in November, the psychopathic powers that be get everything they want for Christmas a month early anyway. As I've previously written many times, the present system is completely and utterly unsalvageable. Unless, of course, you're in the tippy-top 1%. Then it's a finely tuned machine of wonders. I suppose I will always have mixed feelings about leaving the United States. Not any of them rational, all of them emotional, and none of them of any consequence. We're having too much fun up here to dwell upon the latest crazy emanating south of the border. We don't need any reminders that it's not perfect up here. Predatory capitalism doesn't stop at the border. Global warming is not country-specific. And Stephen Harper's conservative government is pretty damn scary. But there ain't no crazy. And for now, that's good enough for me. Regards from beautiful British Columbia, Bob. Another Moment with Bob, brought to you by your friends at Offshore Drilling, or he may have switched sponsors. It may be Tar Sands Drilling now. I'm not sure. Thanks, Bob. And again, you can read the full unexpurgated copy, and the only part that was purgated was some really nice personal stuff about what his family and he have been doing. You can read it in its entirety at tvnewslies.org.